Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kudlow. I'm Larry Kudlow. So President Biden out in Michigan yesterday basically argued that opposing his reckless spending, big government socialist plan will lead to America's decline. And of course, he has frequently argued in the past that he has tremendous support for his program, even arguing that Republicans outside of Congress are big supporters of his plan. Remember all that? He used to say that all the time. Here's what Biden had to say yesterday.
These bills are not about left versus right, or moderate versus progressive, or anything that pits Americans against one another. These bills are about competitiveness versus complacency. They're about opportunity versus decay. They're about leading the world or continue to let the world pass us by, which is literally happening. To support these investments is to create a rising America. America is moving. To oppose these investments is to be complicit in America's decline.
Well, with all respect, Mr. President, virtually every poll now shows that American voters disagree with you. You might want to think about these numbers. From Trafalgar, 71% of Americans say they won't support Biden's $3.5 trillion reconciliation package if it increases their taxes. The Morning Consult poll shows 52% oppose making child tax credits permanent. Only 35% support. And in the same poll, 52% disapprove of Biden's handling of the economy. Only 40% approve. In the recent Gallup poll, 54% believe Republicans will do better keeping America safe from foreign threats. Only 39% Democrats will. In the same poll, 50% believe Republicans will keep America more prosperous. Only 41% think Democrats will. And a recent TIP poll shows that 51% of Americans support cutting spending to stop inflation. Cutting spending. Also from a TIP poll, 51% of independents oppose Biden's reconciliation plan. And today's Quinnipiac poll shows 54% of Americans approve of Biden's position on taxes, disapprove. In the same poll, 55% of Americans think the Biden administration is not competent. 58% disapprove of his job as commander-in-chief. 67% disapprove of the situation at the Mexican border. And 58% disapprove of his handling of foreign policy. And then in the generic congressional vote, again from Quinnipiac, Republicans are up 3 points over Democrats, which is remarkable. It probably means they're up 10 points. So, Mr. President, you might want to rethink your view that the country is in full-throated support of you. Your management skills and your policies are not popular. Now, I don't believe in governing by poll, never have. But when you see a whole bunch of them, including at least one conservative-leaning poll, but most of the usual liberal-leaning polls saying the same thing, you kind of have to think there's a disconnect between you and voter support. Basically, voters saying inflation is the #1 problem on the economy, and very few people want to spend another $6 trillion. Or if you're worried about 11 million unfilled jobs and concerns about the blue-collar middle class where real wages are falling, not to speak of global competitiveness problems, especially with China, you wouldn't really want to raise business taxes, capital gains investment taxes, estate taxes, or individual taxes, especially since that would leave China with lower tax rates than the U.S. This is not good. Basically, sir, to quote Abe Lincoln, I think this came from Lincoln, quote, "You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." It's a wonderful quote. It's very appropriate, and I choose to believe that Abe Lincoln said it. So with gasoline and oil prices going up and up, you really wouldn't want to shut down America's world #1 fossil fuel industry and then go begging on your hands and knees to Saudi Arabia and Russia now, would you? Or with natural gas prices soaring, you really wouldn't want to have a Green New Deal that will shut down nat gas and therefore jack up prices on home heating fuel, which is so essential to America's middle class. And finally, it's really American common sense that big government socialist planning and welfare dependency, with no means-tested entitlements, no time limits, no workfare or education requirements, that all that's going to strengthen the morale of American workers and families? Without work, there's no opportunity to climb the ladder of success. So I would just say, Mr. President, you've got some serious rethinking to do here. The unpopularity of your policies is staggering. And it's not about complex economic models or mere academic debates. It's just good old-fashioned common sense. Americans know a phony when they see one. And to the Americans, I say, save America. Kill the bill. That's my riff.